In a blistering and deeply personal critique, comedian Marc Maron has pulled no punches in his assessment of fellow comic Bill Maher, accusing him of a desperate attempt to cling to cultural relevance. But here's where it gets controversial. Maron suggests this desperation is causing Maher to fundamentally alter his comedic and political stance in ways that are hard to watch. Maron laid out his strikingly candid views on a recent episode of the podcast Pod Save America, stating unequivocally, "I can't do it," in reference to enjoying Maher's work. He elaborated that he has always been put off by Maher's overall tone, a sentiment that has only grown stronger over time. And this is the part most people miss. Maron, a 62-year-old pioneer in podcasting, famous for his show WTF with Marc Maron, is not a casual observer. He has been a guest on both of Maher's major programs, Politically Incorrect and Real Time. This history makes his current disillusionment all the more pointed. He posits that a specific phenomenon is at play, not just with Maher, but with what he calls some of the other boomers, a frantic chasing of relevance that he believes warps a person's perspective and ultimately makes their entire creative output feel inauthentic and, yes, desperate. Maron specifically singled out Maher's frequent and vocal critiques of wokeness as a central point of divergence, concluding simply, "It's just not for me." While he did concede that Maher employs skilled joke writers who know how to write for his tone, Maron asserted that this professional polish is the only positive he can identify. The core of his criticism cuts deeper. "I can't see past the desperation and what he's willing to do to stay in the conversation." This is not the first time Maron has publicly clashed with Maher. The feud escalated significantly back in March when, on his own podcast alongside comedian Kamau Bell, Maron bluntly labeled Maher a bitch for expressing any agreement with former President Donald Trump. In that instance, Maron mocked Maher's attempt to find common ground with the MAGA movement, a stance Maher had framed as a wait-and-see approach to a potential second Trump term. This raises a provocative question. Can a commentator be both a critic of Trump's actions and agree with him on certain points without being labeled a sellout? Here's where the situation becomes incredibly complex and ripe for debate. Despite Maron's accusations, Bill Maher has himself been a vocal critic of what he perceives as dire threats from the Trump camp. Just recently on Real Time, Maher issued a stark warning about a slow-moving coup, expressing grave concern that the militarization of U.S. cities and the deployment of the National Guard in Washington, D.C. could be a strategy to undermine the presidential election process. So, does Maher's criticism of Trump invalidate Maron's claim of desperation? Or does his occasional agreement with him prove Maron's point? Maron has been preoccupied with this theme of comedians shifting their ideologies. In an October 2024 interview, he grimly joked that aging comedians who drift to the right just have to die sooner, explicitly naming Maher as a current example. Prior to the 2024 election, Maron ignited a firestorm in the comedy community with a newsletter essay that accused conservative-leaning comedians of normalizing fascism by platforming Trump on their shows. He argued that this anti-woke flank of the new fascism is being driven almost exclusively by comics, and that their motives, whether cynical financial gain, the grift, or genuine belief, were ultimately irrelevant because the outcome is the same, supporting what he sees as fundamentally anti-democratic forces. This is a bold and deeply divisive claim. Do you agree that comedians have such a profound responsibility, or is that an unfair burden to place on entertainers? We've reached out to Bill Maher's representatives for their side of the story. What's your take on this clash of comedic titans? Do you see Maher's actions as a desperate grab for relevance, or a nuanced attempt to engage with complex ideas? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're eager to hear where you stand on this heated debate.